Season 5 is finally approaching its ultimate ending, the last episode of a story that has grown bigger, darker, and more emotional with every chapter. For nearly a decade, we've watched kids from a small town fight creatures older than humanity, survive disasters no one else could see, and carry the weight of two worlds on their shoulders. And now, everything they've ever fought for leads to one defining moment. The final episode isn't just a finale, it's the conclusion of mysteries that started the night Will Byers vanished, the truth behind the abyss, Henry's final plan, Eleven's destiny, the return of the Mind Flayer. All of it is about to collide in a way the show has never dared to attempt before. This is the last battle, the last journey into the unknown, and the last time these characters will stand together against the darkness that has followed them since the very beginning. And today, we're breaking down exactly what will happen in the Stranger Things Season 5 finale. Before we dive into this massive breakdown, make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe so you don't miss any of my Stranger Things content. Alright, let's get into it. By the time we reach the finale, the entire group finally understands a truth they were never prepared to face. The Upside Down was never the battlefield. It was only the doorway. The real threat, the origin of every nightmare since 1983, lies inside the abyss. Everything the characters thought they understood now feels small compared to what's coming. The Upside Down was simply the shell, the shadow. But the abyss is the source. It's where Henry fell, where the darkness found him, where the Mind Flayer was born, and where the final decision determining the fate of the world must unfold. Now reunited, exhausted, and completely out of time, the group forms their final plan. A plan built on risk, sacrifice, and the hope that their connection to each other is stronger than Henry's connection to the darkness. The idea is terrifyingly simple. They need Henry to believe he's already winning. The date is November 6th, the same day Will vanished, the day the first tear between worlds opened, the anniversary Henry has been waiting for. He intends to merge the right side up with the abyss permanently, using the 12 vessels he selected. Weak minds he could mold, influence, and twist into tools for his new reality. So the group decides to weaponize Henry's arrogance. They will let the bridge between dimensions shrink, destabilize, and draw them in. The smaller the bridge gets, the closer it pulls them to the abyss, the only place where 11 can get close enough to attack Henry directly inside his mind. It's a strategy that sounds impossible, and honestly it might be. As the exotic matter collapses inward, reality begins to fold, gravity shifts, and the world around them breaks apart. But this destruction is the key. That exotic matter is the glue that holds the connection between all dimensions together. If they can reach the core of the abyss and force it to collapse entirely, the Upside Down will die with it. Every tendril, every portal, every piece of corrupted space will be severed forever. Destroy the exotic matter, and everything the darkness built comes crashing down. The mission relies on timing, bravery, and a kind of trust that only this group could still believe in after everything they've lived through. They've already lost friends, futures, and pieces of themselves. They know what's at stake. They know some of them may not return. They know that once they enter the abyss, there's no going back. But still, they move forward, because for them, saving the world isn't just duty, it's personal. For the first time since Season 1, we finally see Eleven and Will standing on the same side of the battlefield, not just as friends, but as two halves of the same weapon. Their connection to Henry is different, but together, it becomes something the show has been building toward for years. Eleven is the only person who has ever beaten Henry, not weakened him, not slowed him down, but sent him somewhere he wasn't supposed to survive. Will, on the other hand, carries something far more dangerous. The darkness never fully left him. The Mind Flayer's presence, the cold breath on his neck, the visions, the feeling that something is watching him has been following him since the night he disappeared. And in Volume 1, when Will's powers awakened, it became painfully clear that Henry has a deep connection to him that nobody fully understands. For years, Will believed this connection made him a target. Now he realizes it makes him a weapon. In the finale, Eleven and Will become the only two people capable of reaching Henry inside the abyss. Not physically, mentally. They have to enter the very heart of Henry's consciousness. The place where the Mind Flayer was formed. The place where the darkness first merged with him. And when they do, they won't just be fighting monsters, they'll be fighting Henry's memories, his regrets, and the twisted world he built out of trauma. The reason this team up is so important is because Henry only fears two things: the girl who defeated him, and the boy he could never fully control. Will's connection allows them to locate Henry's true form form within the abyss, the core of the darkness, the spot 11 must reach to collapse the exotic matter. But Will also becomes the key to dividing Henry's strength. Every time Henry tries to manipulate 11, he must also deal with Will pulling at the same thread of power from the inside, two minds attacking the same source from two directions. For once, Henry isn't the hunter, he's surrounded, and this terrifies him. The beautiful thing about their final team up is how it completes their journeys. 11 has always believed her greatest power came from being the strongest person in the room, but here she learned something else. She doesn't win because she's powerful. She wins because she's not alone. And Will, who spent years feeling broken, haunted, and out of place in his own life, finally discovers that the thing he thought made him a curse is what ultimately saves everyone. He's the only one who can walk directly into the darkness without losing himself, not because he's stronger than 11, but because he's lived with the darkness longer than anyone else. Together, they enter Henry's mind not as victims, but as the final light, standing against everything that began the night Will was taken. Their team up isn't just the show's payoff, it's the emotional centerpiece of the entire finale. Among all the chaos, destruction, and supernatural terror in Volume 2, one of the most human moments comes from a storyline that has nothing to do with monsters, but everything to do with honesty. For years, Nancy Wheeler and Jonathan Byers have been holding their relationship together with string, memories, and the belief that surviving trauma together meant they were meant for each other. But deep down, both of them have been suffocating, and the finale forces them to confront something far scarier than the upside down: the truth. During the breathing scene, when they're trapped in the abyss's collapsing tunnels, everything around them feels like it's ending, because in a way, it is. The walls are shaking, the air is thinning, and their bodies are exhausted from running, fighting, and pretending. They don't know if they'll survive the next few minutes. And that's exactly what makes the moment so brutally honest. Jonathan breaks first, not physically and emotionally. He finally admits something he's been burying for years, that being with Nancy hasn't felt like love anymore, but like pressure. Pressure to be the brave one, pressure to be the calm one, pressure to pretend he wasn't terrified of the future she wanted, a future he knew he couldn't give her. What he says about not being able to breathe is one of the heaviest lines of the season, because it isn't about Nancy not loving him, it's about both of them holding on so tightly to a version of themselves that no longer exists. Nancy, hearing this, stops pretending too. She admits that she has also been scared, not of losing him, but of admitting that they weren't right for each other anymore, that the connection they thought was love might have really been trauma, survival, and a shared fear of letting go. In that moment, surrounded by darkness, they finally tell each other the truth. They're not in love, they're not happy, and they're only still together because they were afraid of the pain that would come with walking away. And the beauty of the scene is that it doesn't make them enemies, it makes them human. Jonathan apologizes not because he doesn't care, but because he cares enough to stop pretending. Nancy listens, not with anger, but relief, because she's been carrying the same truth. It's a breakup disguised as a survival moment, a quiet ending inside the loudest episode, one relationship collapsing at the same time the barrier between worlds collapses in the background, and the metaphor couldn't be more perfect. Old things die, so new things can finally breathe. The scene isn't about pain, it's about release. For the first time since season 1, Nancy and Jonathan can look at each other with honesty instead of fear. And in a show filled with monsters and shadows, this moment of raw vulnerability hits harder than any jump scare, because sometimes the scariest thing you can do is tell the truth. If there's one character whose fate feels the most fragile going into the finale, it's Jim Hopper. Not because he's weak, not because he's unprepared, but because he's reached a point in his life where he finally has something to lose again. Hopper began this entire story as a man who had already lost everything: his daughter, his marriage, his sense of purpose. The only thing he wanted back then was distraction, noise. A way to avoid thinking about the grief that lived under his skin. But now he has a family, he has Joyce, he has 11, he has a future he never thought he deserved. And that is exactly why the finale puts him in the most dangerous emotional position of all. Because Stranger Things has always been about one theme: parents will do anything for their children, and Hopper's entire arc has been leading him toward one final moment of sacrifice. The moment he faces the same nightmare that destroyed him years ago when he lost Sarah. The fear doesn't come from the monsters, it comes from the idea idea of losing 11, and in Volume 2, the show makes this painfully clear when Hopper realizes that Carly wants 11 to stay behind and die in the collapse of the abyss, even if it's for the greater good. He snaps. It's the first time we see true panic in his eyes since the hospital attack in season 3. It's the panic of a father who refuses to bury another child. He knows 11 is willing to sacrifice herself. He knows she believes it's her responsibility. And worst of all, he knows she might actually go through with it. That emotional conflict sets up the moment fans are dreading. Hopper is going to follow her into the abyss, even if the ground is collapsing, even if the exotic matter is imploding, even if the only way out is closing forever. Because for Hopper, this isn't a choice, it's instinct, and somewhere deep inside, viewers know exactly what this means. Hopper may not walk out with her. The most terrifying detail is that the story has been quietly preparing us for this. All season long, Hopper has been repeating the same idea. Not her, not again, not this time. He knows 11 is the strongest weapon they have. He knows the fate of the world is tied to her, but he also knows she is still a child, his child. And if this mission kills her, then the world that gets saved won't be one he wants to live in. The possible emotional punch is devastating. The moment 11 collapses from pushing her powers too far, the moment Henry gains the upper hand in the dimension inside his mind, the moment Carly's plan tries to force 11 into a suicide mission, that's the moment Hopper will act. And it won't be subtle, it won't be quiet, it won't be heroic for the sake of glory. It will be raw, desperate, violent, a father fighting the universe itself just to keep the only family he has left alive. The finale may put him in direct conflict with Carly, with the military, or even with the collapsing abyss itself. But one thing is certain, Hopper will not let 11 face death alone. And the heartbreaking truth is this: if one major character dies in the finale, Hopper is the most narratively meaningful choice. He came into the series broken. He found purpose again through love, through family, through rediscovering the man he once was. And if the show chooses to close his arc with sacrifice, not out of hopelessness, but out of love, it would hit harder than any death the series has ever delivered. A man who lost his daughter once, refusing to let history repeat itself, even if it means he doesn't return. It's the moment fans are terrified of, because deep down, it feels inevitable. Carly's arc in this final season has been one of the most unpredictable storylines, but nothing compares to the betrayal that's coming. Throughout the season, Carly has been presented as the outsider who wants to help, the person trying to make up for her past mistakes, the one who claims she finally understands the danger Hawkins is in. But in the final episodes, we finally learn the truth. She was never on the kid's side. Carly's betrayal isn't a classic villain turn. It's a slow, emotional collapse. She begins by feeding Vecna small pieces of information, believing she's keeping her friends safe. Then she starts lying. Then she starts manipulating situations to get exactly what Vecna wants. By the time the group realizes what's happening, it's too late. Carly has already set everything in motion. The most devastating part? Carly doesn't betray them out of malice. She betrays them out of fear. Vecna preys on her insecurities, her trauma, and her biggest weakness, the belief that she isn't strong enough to survive without someone protecting her. In her final moment, Carly makes the choice that changes everything. She opens the last gate. The scene is going to be heartbreaking. It's not loud, it's not explosive, it's quiet. Carly apologizes as she turns against the group, tears in her eyes, knowing she's about to destroy everything they've been fighting for. And the worst part, she thinks she's doing the right thing. This betrayal sets up one of the biggest confrontations of the finale, and it proves that in Stranger Things, the greatest threat isn't always a monster. Sometimes it's the person standing right next to you. For years, fans believed the Mind Flayer was gone, dissolved, defeated, or at least trapped inside the Upside Down with no real way back. But Season 5 proves one terrifying truth. The Mind Flayer was never destroyed. It was simply waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right vessel, waiting for the final crack between both worlds to open wide enough for it to slip through again. The return doesn't happen all at once. It starts slowly, almost quietly, shadows stretching longer than they should, cold spots forming in houses that were supposed to be safe, a strange mist drifting through Hawkins just like in Season 2. Animals vanish, lights flicker, the ground trembles as if something enormous is moving beneath the surface. And then the signs become undeniable. People begin to feel it, an overwhelming pressure, like something huge is pushing into their world. Will is the first to sense it. The camera stays tight on his face as he freezes, unable to breathe, clutching the back of his neck. The Mind Flayer has found him again. The connection they thought was broken is still alive, stronger than than ever, but this time, the Mind Flayer doesn't want control. It wants revenge. The creature begins to manifest physically, taking a form far more evolved and horrifying than anything we've seen before. It's no longer just a shadow beast. It's a fusion of upside-down biology and the hatred Vecna has been feeding it for years. Massive, intelligent, and angry, the new Mind Flayer towers over Hawkins, its limbs like living storms, its eyes burning with an understanding of the human world and a desire to erase it. The group realizes something terrifying. Vecna was never the final threat. He was just the architect, the mastermind, the one building the kingdom. But the Mind Flayer? It's the king, the original power of the Upside Down, the ancient monster Vecna, shaped, weaponized, and revived. Now that it's back, nothing is the same. Every character understands this is the endgame. The creature that haunted Will, possessed Billy, and nearly destroyed Hawkins has returned for one last war. The stakes are higher, the danger is bigger, and the fear of losing everything becomes painfully real. The Mind Flayer's return isn't just a twist, it's the moment the series transforms into a full-scale apocalyptic showdown. In a season filled with monsters, betrayals, and world-ending stakes, Stranger Things makes a surprising choice. It puts two of the most vulnerable characters, Max and Holly Wheeler, at the emotional core of the finale, and this decision reshapes everything. Max's journey has been one of the most painful arcs in the entire series. After the events of Volume 1, she's forced to rebuild herself from the ground up, physically, emotionally, mentally, but as Hawkins collapses around her, Max becomes something unexpected. The soul of the story. Her trauma isn't a weakness anymore. It becomes her strength. She understands fear better than anyone. She understands what it means to lose everything, and that's why she refuses to let the darkness win again. Then there's Holly, the youngest, the quietest, the one everyone forgets is even in the room. But in the finale, Holly becomes the symbol of innocence the group is fighting to protect. She begins sensing things before they happen, almost like she has a strange connection to the Upside Down's energy. At first, no one believes her. She's just a kid, but Holly's instincts turn out to be right every single time, guiding the group away from danger and showing them where the next tear between worlds will open. As Max and Holly grow closer, their bond becomes one of the most touching dynamics of the entire season. Max sees a younger version of herself in Holly, scared, but curious, brave in her own quiet way. Holly, on the other hand, sees Max as a hero, someone who survived the monster everyone is terrified of. And in the final battle, this relationship becomes the emotional foundation the entire story rests on. The finale gives them one of the most powerful scenes in the series. As the Mind Flayer towers above Hawkins and darkness spreads across the sky, Max kneels beside Holly, holding her hand, promising her that this time the monster won't win. It's not a big speech. It's not dramatic music. It's simple, raw, human. A reminder of why they're fighting. Max is fighting for redemption. Holly represents the future they're trying to save. Their connection becomes the emotional heartbeat of the final episodes, grounding the chaos with real, fragile humanity. And when the battle reaches its peak, it's Max and Holly, not the strongest, not the oldest, not the most powerful, who remind everyone what's truly at stake: hope. The final episode of Stranger Things isn't just the end of a story, it's the end of a world we've followed for nearly a decade. Every character, every monster, every mystery leads to this final moment where the fate of Hawkins and the real world is decided once and for all. The finale doesn't open with action, it opens with silence. Hawkins is half destroyed, skies torn open, ash drifting like snow. The Upside Down and the real world have merged into one nightmare landscape, and for the first time, our characters look genuinely defeated. They're tired, bruised, bleeding, emotionally empty, but they're still standing. This is where the final mission begins. The truth behind the ending becomes clear. The Upside Down can't be closed, sealed, or pushed back by force. It has to be reset, erased from the timeline completely. The only way to do that is by destroying the source of the corruption, the ancient power that created the dimension in the first place. Vecna knows this. The Mind Flayer knows this. And deep down, so does 11. The group splits up one last time, each team with a purpose. Hopper leads the ground fight, buying time. Nancy, Steve, and Jonathan hunt for the core within the newly transformed Hawkins. Will faces the Mind Flayer again, this time not as a victim, but as someone ready to end the horror that has haunted him since season 1. And 11, she heads directly into the heart of the storm, the place where the first tear between worlds opened years ago. This is where she was born, where everything began, and where everything has to end. The final battle is massive, apocalyptic, and emotional. 11 confronts Vecna in a showdown that feels like destiny itself. But here's the twist. She doesn't defeat him with power alone. She defeats him by breaking the connection he forced on the Upside Down, destroying the system he created, freeing the Mind Flayer from his control, and collapsing the dimension he shaped. The moment the Upside Down begins to unravel is the moment the show reveals its true theme. This was never only a story about monsters. It was a story about trauma, healing, and the strength of human bonds. As the world collapses around them, the characters hold on to each other. Max and Holly, Will and Mike, Hopper and Eleven, Nancy and Steve, proving that connection is the only thing stronger than darkness. The ending isn't perfectly happy. Hawkins doesn't magically return to normal. There's loss, there's sacrifice. There are characters who don't make it to the end, but the world is saved, not by power, but by love, bravery, and the choices these characters make in their final moments. The final shot of the series is quiet and symbolic. The gates sealed, the sky finally clearing, and the survivors standing together in the ruins of their town. No cliffhanger, no setup for a sequel, just a promise that despite everything they endured, they won. And they will carry these memories, these scars, and these friendships for the rest of their lives. This is how Stranger Things closes, not with a scream, but with a final breath of hope. Everything we know, everything we can predict, and everything we're expecting for the Stranger Things Season 5 finale. From the terrifying depths of the abyss to the shocking betrayal of Carly, the return of the Mind Flayer, and the emotional journeys of Max, Holly, Eleven, and Will. This episode promises to be the most intense chapter the series has ever delivered. The finale isn't just about monsters or supernatural battles. It's about family, friendship, sacrifice, and the choices that define us. The very things that have been at the heart of this story since the first season. Some characters may not make it, some relationships may end, but every moment, every struggle, and every tear brings the story to its inevitable emotional conclusion. I want to hear your thoughts. Who do you think will survive the final battle? Who might make the ultimate sacrifice? And what are your predictions for how Eleven and Will face Vecna and the Mind Flayer together? Drop your theories and reactions in the comments. I read every single one, and I love seeing how the community thinks about these finales. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any of my future Stranger Things videos, episode analyses, or theory breakdowns. We're only moments away from the final chapter, and you'll want to be here for all of it. Thank you so much for watching Stranger Things. Season 5 is almost over, but the story, the mysteries, and the emotions are bigger than ever. I'll see you in the next video where we'll dive even deeper into the finale and explore every last detail of the ending, because in Hawkins, nothing is ever simple and everything is connected.